Toxic Superfoods. This video is based on key insights from the book Toxic Superfoods by Sally Norton. Introduction. Sally Norton begins by pointing out a surprising idea. The foods we often think are super healthy could actually be making us feel unwell. She shares a medical observation from 1992, highlighting that even plant foods used in cooking can sometimes cause poisoning. Norton explains that she discovered this the hard way, despite having degrees in nutrition and public health. She realized that many popular health foods were actually contributing to her health problems. Norton focuses on oxalates, natural toxins found in many plants. These are present in foods like almonds, spinach, chocolate, and even blackberries, foods often praised for their health benefits. She emphasizes that despite being naturally occurring, high amounts of oxalates can be harmful. The author notes that this idea isn't new, with science supporting it for around 200 years, but it's often overlooked because of current food trends. Norton explains that a lot of modern health issues, like digestive problems, pain, and low energy, might be linked to eating too many oxalates. She suggests that simply switching to low oxalate foods can help people feel better, even reversing conditions like thyroid problems or chronic pain. She believes avoiding oxalates can improve sleep, energy levels, and even protect against long-term health issues like arthritis. The author details that she has spent considerable time researching this topic, studying medical journals to understand how oxalates affect the body. Norton explains that oxalates can cause health problems because they are poisonous to the body. She also points out that it's often difficult to connect oxalate consumption with health issues because we're taught to trust these healthy foods. Norton describes a wide range of symptoms that could indicate oxalate overload, from digestive issues to more serious diseases. She provides a self-quiz in the book to help readers assess their risk. She also offers practical advice on how to switch to a low-oxalate diet, suggesting simple swaps like using turnips instead of potatoes or pumpkin seeds instead of almonds. Norton acknowledges that changing your diet won't provide instant results. She explains that it takes time for the body to get rid of built-up oxalates, and people might experience temporary flare-ups of symptoms during the healing process. She shares success stories from people who have improved their health by reducing oxalate intake, including one client whose thyroid condition was cured without medication. Norton hopes her book will inspire further research into the impact of oxalates on health and empower readers to take control of their well-being. Chapter 1: Health Food or Health Disaster. Sally Norton begins by pointing out that sometimes what we think is good for our health can actually be causing problems. She uses an example of actor Liam Hemsworth, who ended up with kidney stones after drinking lots of spinach smoothies, believing he was doing something super healthy. This illustrates a bigger idea. We often assume we know what's best for our bodies, but that belief can actually prevent us from discovering the truth. Norton explains that even small amounts of a substance called oxalate, found in many healthy foods, can lead to everyday aches and pains like digestive issues, joint inflammation, skin problems, and even feeling foggy-headed. A large percentage of kidney stones are formed from oxalate, which comes from the foods we eat. She shares a scary story of a woman who became dependent on kidney dialysis after a green smoothie cleanse, and another man who damaged his kidneys by juicing lots of vegetables. It's not just kidney failure, Norton warns. Oxalate can affect the whole body and cause long-term health issues. The author notes that many people might already be experiencing mild oxalate-related problems without realizing it. These could include a stiff neck, joint pain, or chronic injuries that don't heal. Doctors often dismiss these symptoms as just part of life, but Norton suggests they could be linked to too much oxalate in the diet. Other signs might include dry eyes, tooth sensitivity, or digestive problems like bloating and constipation. Even things like clumsiness, muscle spasms, or trouble remembering things could be related. Norton emphasizes that you don't need to have obvious symptoms to have a problem with oxalates. They can build up over time and cause issues later in life, like weakening bones or even brain problems. Norton identifies several factors that can increase the risk of oxalate overload. These include diets low in calcium and minerals, like vegan diets, eating foods that irritate the gut, like beans and whole grains, taking antibiotics frequently, using pain medications, being overweight or having diabetes, and having digestive issues like Crohn's disease or IBS. Norton then shares her own story. She considered herself a healthy eater for years, but her health actually got worse despite following all the right advice. She was exhausted, couldn't focus, and had joint pain. It wasn't until she stumbled upon a low oxalate diet while seeking help for a different problem that she started to feel better. She realized that foods she thought were healthy, like sweet potatoes and spinach, were actually making her sick. Once she eliminated these foods, her sleep improved, her pain disappeared, and she felt years younger. Through her work with others, Norton discovered that many people experience similar improvements on a low oxalate diet. People reported relief from itching, muscle pain, and other chronic conditions. She was surprised by how widespread the benefits were, and realized that oxalate overload is a common problem that often goes unrecognized by doctors. Norton points out that doctors often dismiss patients' symptoms or misdiagnose them, sometimes even suggesting psychological problems. Norton stresses that we've been told plants are always good for us, but that's not entirely true. Plants contain toxins, including oxalates, that can harm our bodies. She believes it's time to question the idea that plants are always beneficial, and to consider the possibility that some health foods might be contributing to our health problems. She concludes by highlighting the need for a more complete understanding of oxalates and their effects on our health. Chapter 2: Oxalates are weapons for plants. Sally Norton begins by explaining that plants actually use oxalates as a defense mechanism, a kind of poison to stop animals from eating them. It's a powerful substance, strong enough to cause pain and even paralysis. Surprisingly, humans have also found uses for oxalic acid, like in pesticides and even to treat bee infections, but it's also very toxic, especially to young bees. Norton points out that while honey might have a little oxalate, plants themselves contain much more. She shares a fascinating story of African hunters using banana tree sap, rich in oxalic acid, to paralyze their prey with a nerve toxin. The problem, Norton explains, isn't just that oxalates are toxic, but how they form crystals inside plants. These crystals aren't smooth. They have sharp, needle-like shapes designed to puncture tissues and deliver even more toxins. Even caterpillars, natural plant eaters, can die from these crystal arrows. A common houseplant, Dieffenbachia, often called dumb cane, is famous for shooting these crystals into mouths and throats, causing swelling and even temporary loss of speech. These crystals are tough, resisting cooking and digestion, and can cause wear on our teeth. Norton emphasizes that while plants need oxalates, humans absolutely do not. She details how plants use oxalates for various functions: protection, calcium management, carbon saving, and even capturing sunlight. But these benefits don't translate to us. She notes that scientists are trying to create low oxalate spinach, but haven't succeeded yet. The author then dives into how our modern food preparation methods can actually increase our exposure to oxalates. She explains that simply blending or juicing foods breaks down plant cells, releasing those irritating crystals and making the oxalic acid more readily available to harm our bodies. She uses the example of almond milk, explaining how pulverizing almonds creates a drink high in bioavailable oxalate, and even calcium added to the milk doesn't seem to block its absorption. She cites a case of 3 young children who developed kidney problems from drinking too much almond milk. Even skin irritation can occur, as seen in workers on agave farms. Norton clarifies that oxalates come in 2 forms: soluble, free oxalic acid, and insoluble crystals. While only a small amount of the crystal form is thought to enter our bloodstream, the amount can change depending on stomach acid and what other foods we eat with it. She points out that the accuracy of oxalate data in foods is often questionable, with variations depending on growing conditions, plant variety, and ripeness. She warns against relying on inaccurate online information, using an example of a website incorrectly listing the oxalate content of turnips. Norton categorizes foods based on their oxalate levels. Foods from the cabbage family, broccoli, cauliflower, and true lettuces are generally low in oxalates. Seeds, beans, and certain spices are consistently high. Nightshades, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant vary, with ripe red peppers being lower than green, yellow, or orange ones. She also explains that concentrating foods, like making tomato sauce, increases oxalate levels. Finally, Norton highlights that mold contamination in foods like wheat flour and fruits can also contribute to our oxalate intake, as can the practice of using oxalic acid to keep leafy greens looking fresh. Chapter 3: How Much is Too Much? Sally Norton begins by pointing out a surprising truth. The foods we often think are healthy could actually be making us sick. She uses a quote from Alice in Wonderland to illustrate this. Even something labeled poison isn't harmful unless you consume too much of it. Norton explains that oxalates, naturally found in many plant foods, can be harmful if we eat too many. It's not just a human problem. Animals like insects, sheep, and even horses get sick from eating plants high in oxalates. For example, horses can develop a condition called big head, where their faces swell and bones become damaged. The author details how even sheep, who are good at digesting plants, can get sick from eating beet greens, showing tremors and losing their appetite. Norton emphasizes that oxalates interfere with how our bodies use important minerals like calcium, impacting our bones, muscles, nerves, and even our brains. While a safe amount of oxalates is considered 150-200 mg a day, many people unknowingly eat much more. A truly high intake is anything over 250 mg, and extremely high is over 600 mg. The problem is, food labels don't list oxalate content, so we're often in the dark about how much we're actually consuming. Norton provides a list of common foods and their oxalate levels to show how quickly things can add up. She points out seemingly healthy choices like spinach, almonds, chocolate, and even green tea can be surprisingly high in oxalates. She uses the example of Liam Hemsworth, who needed kidney stone surgery after drinking spinach smoothies, consuming over 1,000 mg of oxalates in just one drink. Norton stresses that even small amounts of oxalate-rich foods, like a handful of almonds or a chocolate bar, can contribute significantly to daily intake. The author contrasts two menus, one with 1,000 mg of oxalates and another with only 100 mg, to demonstrate how easily we can unknowingly choose a high oxalate diet. She notes that even nutrition professionals often aren't aware of the dangers of oxalates. Norton explains that we tend to focus on fat, salt, and carbs when evaluating food, completely overlooking oxalate content. She shares a story about a colleague, May, who ate a very healthy diet full of spinach, berries, and nuts, but was experiencing health problems due to her high oxalate intake. Norton clarifies that a normal diet should be under 200 mg of oxalates, while a truly low oxalate diet is under 60 mg. She explains that reducing oxalate intake can lead to improvements in health within days. She emphasizes that overloading on oxalates leads to both toxicity, where the body is harmed by the substance, and deficiency, where the body is lacking essential nutrients. Norton argues that chronic exposure to toxins, even at low levels, can contribute to long-term health problems and accelerated aging. She concludes that we are consuming more oxalates than ever before, and this is leading to unforeseen health consequences. Chapter 4: Toxic Delusions and Troubling Trends. Sally Norton begins by pointing out a surprising idea. The very foods people eat to get healthier, like salads, might actually be making them sick. She quotes a food writer who calls people who eat a lot of salads salad gluttons, and suggests they've been tricked into believing all foods are either poison or medicine. Norton argues this way of thinking is wrong and even harmful. Today, thanks to modern farming and shipping, we have access to foods year-round that our ancestors didn't. Norton focuses on oxalate, a natural substance found in many plant foods, as a key problem. She explains that foods like spinach and sweet potatoes are becoming more and more common in our diets, but they're also very high in oxalate. These weren't always staples in human diets, and our bodies may not be well equipped to handle so much of it. Norton explains that many foods considered healthy, like blackberries and spinach, are actually high in oxalate. She notes that in the past, people in colder climates relied more on meat and seafood during the winter because plants weren't readily available. Now, marketing and food trends, not nature, dictate what we eat. A big part of the problem, Norton says, is snacking. People snack more now than they used to, often choosing processed foods or healthy snacks like trail mix that are also high in oxalate. She points out that eating frequent, small meals can actually make you feel hungrier, leading to more snacking. She contrasts this with eating larger, more filling meals with protein and fat. Norton also discusses how we've replaced traditional foods with substitutes. For example, people are now drinking almond milk instead of cow's milk. While these substitutes might seem healthier, they often contain more oxalate and fewer nutrients. She explains that making these plant-based milks involves a lot of processing that can reduce their nutritional value. The author highlights that many people are following specific diets like paleo, keto, or vegan that emphasize plant foods. While these diets can be helpful, they often include high oxalate foods, potentially leading to problems. She uses the example of a paleo diet that includes lots of nuts and salads, or a vegan diet that relies on plant-based milks. Norton emphasizes that we're often missing essential nutrients because of the way we eat. Plants contain compounds that can block the absorption of important minerals like calcium and iron. Oxalate is one of these compounds, and it can steal minerals from our bodies. She explains that even if a food is labeled as having a lot of calcium, our bodies might not be able to use it if it's bound to oxalate. She explains that oxalate doesn't just block mineral absorption. It can also cause mineral deficiencies and directly harm our cells. Norton references old research showing that feeding spinach to rats led to weak bones and health problems. She points out that this issue has been known for decades, but often ignored. Norton argues that many of the claims about the health benefits of plants are overblown. She explains that phytonutrients, often touted as beneficial, aren't essential for our health and can even be harmful in large amounts. She uses the example of turmeric, a popular spice, which has been shown to have limited benefits and potential side effects. Norton suggests that our cultural obsession with plants is misguided. We've been convinced that they're essential for health, but she argues that this isn't necessarily true. She points out that many traditional diets relied more on animal products, and that our bodies may be better suited to those foods. She cautions against blindly following dietary trends and encourages people to consider the potential downsides of plant-based eating. Finally, Norton acknowledges that eating plants can feel good, partly because of the psychological benefits of making healthy choices. However, she urges readers to be aware of the potential harm and to consider a low oxalate diet if they're experiencing health problems. She encourages people to question the conventional wisdom about healthy eating and to prioritize their own well-being. Chapter 5: The Many Faces of a Poison. Sally Norton began her journey into the world of oxalates after a change in her diet led to surprising improvements in her health. Curious, she dove into medical libraries, wanting to understand why simply eating differently could make such a difference. What she discovered was a long-hidden story about oxalates, tiny molecules found in many foods, and how they might be causing health problems for many people, even those trying to eat healthy. Norton learned that oxalates have a surprising history. They were once widely used as a powerful cleaner, marketed as salts of lemon for everything from polishing metal to bleaching fabrics. But this same cleaning power is what makes them potentially harmful inside the body. The author highlights a dangerous trend from the early 1800s where people accidentally poisoned themselves by mistaking oxalic acid for Epsom salts, a common remedy at the time. This led to early research showing that even small amounts of oxalic acid could cause serious illness. The story of oxalates begins with plants like sorrel, a leafy green popular in Europe. Chemists first extracted oxalic acid from these plants, recognizing its sour taste and powerful properties. Norton explains that oxalates work by grabbing onto minerals like calcium and magnesium, essentially locking them up and making them unavailable for the body to use. This mineral theft can lead to a variety of problems, from weak bones to anemia and even heart issues. She uses the example of a man who tragically died after consuming a large amount of sorrel soup, demonstrating how oxalates can disrupt the heart's electrical activity. Norton points out that oxalates aren't just a historical problem. They're still found in many common cleaning products today, like Barkeeper's Friend. But more importantly, they're present in many foods we consider healthy, like spinach, rhubarb, and nuts. The author explains that when oxalates enter the body, they can form tiny crystals that damage cells and cause inflammation. These crystals can accumulate in tissues, creating a constant strain on the body systems. The author emphasizes that people who are already struggling with health issues may be especially vulnerable to the effects of oxalates. Norton uses the example of someone trying to improve their health with superfoods like sorrel, unaware that these foods might actually be making things worse. She explains that even small amounts of oxalates can be problematic, especially when consumed frequently. The body may slowly become depleted of essential minerals, leading to a range of subtle symptoms like fatigue, muscle cramps, and digestive problems. Norton's research revealed a pattern. Foods often promoted for their health benefits could, for some people, be contributing to illness due to their high oxalate content. Chapter 6: Why don't we know about oxalate overload? Sally Norton begins by pointing out a surprising fact. The very foods people eat to improve their health could actually be making them sick. She highlights how little attention is paid to something called oxalate overload, even though scientific evidence about its harmful effects is growing. It's a bit of a mystery why this isn't more widely known. The story of oxalate problems goes way back to the 1840s, when doctors noticed a pattern of health issues in people who ate a lot of certain foods. These people experienced digestive troubles, joint pain, anxiety, and even kidney stones. A British doctor named Goldingberg connected these problems to eating too much oxalate, especially from a popular treat at the time, rhubarb. He warned that ignoring oxalate could be a serious mistake, but his concerns weren't widely accepted. Over time, the condition was called different names, and the list of symptoms grew. By the 1930s, doctors recognized that oxalate could cause things like headaches, low energy, and even changes in behavior. A doctor in the 1940s even noted that people with oxalate kidney stones often seemed nervous and pessimistic. More recently, the case of Liam Hemsworth, who experienced health problems from high oxalate smoothies, illustrates how a modern, health-focused diet can still lead to oxalate overload. Norton explains that Bird's fears came true. Medical science largely stopped recognizing oxalate as a significant health problem in the mid-20th century. This shift happened alongside changes in medical education, where doctors began to rely more on lab tests than on carefully listening to patients and observing their symptoms. While tests are helpful, Norton argues that this approach caused doctors to miss important connections between diet and health. The focus narrowed to kidney stones and kidney disease, with research largely ignoring the possibility that oxalates could cause problems elsewhere in the body. This happened partly because of changes in healthcare funding and a growing emphasis on treating serious illness rather than preventing it through diet. Diet-related solutions weren't seen as profitable, and doctors often didn't encourage or even know how to advise patients on dietary changes. Norton emphasizes that current medical tests aren't good at detecting oxalate overload. Urine and blood tests can't tell if someone is developing problems, and they don't show the subtle damage that oxalates can cause over time. This makes it hard to diagnose and treat oxalate-related illnesses. The author points out that nutrition science hasn't paid enough attention to oxalate either. Early nutrition research focused on calories and basic nutrients, and the idea of foods containing toxins wasn't a major concern. The field was also influenced by people who strongly believed in plant-based diets, which often contain high levels of oxalates. As a result, the potential risks of oxalates are often overlooked, even though evidence of their toxicity continues to grow. Norton concludes that oxalate overload is a hidden problem because people aren't aware of it. It goes against current dietary advice, and there's a general lack of understanding among doctors and nutritionists. Many people are unknowingly eating foods that could be causing a variety of health problems, and their doctors may not even consider oxalate as a possible cause. She notes that it requires a specific set of circumstances: a high oxalate intake combined with low calcium and vitamin D to cause problems, but those circumstances are becoming increasingly common. Chapter 7: A confusing multitude of symptoms and no good tests. Sally Norton begins by noting that understanding poisonings is surprisingly difficult, even for doctors. She points out that many people assume it's easy to study how poisons affect the body, but it actually takes a lot of training to observe these effects accurately. This sets the stage for discussing a hidden source of trouble: oxalates in food. Norton explains that while many doctors today aren't aware of oxalic acid syndrome, it still exists. Often, problems caused by too much oxalate are simply labeled as hyperoxaluria, meaning there's too much oxalate in the urine. Our kidneys usually do a good job of getting rid of waste, including oxalate, through urine. But Norton reveals, even in the past, people noticed things like urinary gravel, crystals in urine, and scientists even studied these crystals under early microscopes. Every time we pee, we're getting rid of oxalate. The author clarifies that our bodies naturally make some oxalate, and our kidneys can usually handle it. A healthy person makes about 12 mg of oxalate daily, and healthy kidneys can get rid of at least twice that amount. Typically, we excrete 15 to 40 mg a day. However, Norton emphasizes that even small increases in oxalate levels can be risky, potentially leading to kidney damage, stones, or chronic kidney disease, even if standard tests don't show anything obviously wrong. She suggests aiming for 25 mg, or less per day for optimal health. Norton explains that kidneys have defenses against oxalate crystals, like surfaces that repel them and substances that bind to calcium and oxalate. But when oxalate levels get too high, crystals can build up in the kidneys. Some people are more vulnerable due to genetics, other toxins, or their diet. The author points out that doctors often dismiss the link between diet and kidney stones because they don't always see a direct connection, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. Oxalate can cause problems beyond just kidney damage. Diagnosing oxalate overload is tricky. There are rare genetic conditions, called primary hyperoxaluria, where the liver makes too much oxalate. But often, these patients don't even show high oxalate levels in urine tests because their kidneys are already damaged. Similarly, secondary hyperoxaluria, caused by diet or other factors, gets lumped in with other causes, making it hard to pinpoint the role of diet. Norton stresses that doctors often miss the idea that diet alone can cause oxalate toxicity. To illustrate this, Norton shares the story of Hannah, a young woman with a long history of kidney stones. Doctors couldn't find anything wrong with her, but she felt terrible. She eventually discovered a podcast by Norton and realized her vegetarian diet might be the problem. After switching to a low oxalate diet, including some meat, Hannah's health dramatically improved. She slept better, her pain disappeared, and she hasn't had a kidney stone in years. Norton explains why standard tests aren't very helpful. Accurate oxalate testing is relatively new, and even now, urine and blood tests don't always reflect how much oxalate is stored in the body. Oxalate levels fluctuate throughout the day and even with the seasons, making it hard to get a clear picture. A single urine test is like a snapshot of a moving target. Norton uses the example of a study of women with vulvar pain, where oxalate levels cycled throughout the day, even though overall 24-hour levels appeared normal. The author notes that normal test results don't guarantee you're oxalate-free. In fact, when kidneys are severely damaged, they may actually show lower oxalate levels in urine because they're holding onto it. She shares a case study of a man whose kidney biopsy showed oxalate crystals and damage, despite normal blood and urine tests. Norton acknowledges that functional medicine doctors sometimes use organic acids tests, OAT, to look for oxalate, but even these tests aren't foolproof. Blood tests are even less reliable. She emphasizes that recognizing oxalate illness requires looking at the whole picture, not just relying on tests. Norton lists common signs of oxalate overload, such as cloudy urine, frequent UTIs, joint pain, digestive issues, brain fog, and unexplained pain. She stresses that any combination of these symptoms should raise a red flag. She draws a parallel between these symptoms and those seen in people with primary hyperoxaluria or acute oxalate poisoning, highlighting that oxalate toxicity can manifest in many ways. Norton concludes by emphasizing that we can learn from studies of these more severe cases. She points out that oxalate can cause problems throughout the body, affecting bones, nerves, and even the brain. The symptoms are often confusing and can mimic other conditions, making diagnosis difficult. She reiterates that while testing has limitations, recognizing the signs and considering dietary factors are crucial for identifying and addressing oxalate overload. Chapter 8: How Your Diet Aggravates Oxalate Overload. Sally Norton begins by referencing a doctor from 1849 who understood that knowing about a disease is the first step to fixing it, and applies this to oxalate overload. She explains that while we often think of healthy eating as plant-focused, those very plants can be a hidden source of trouble. The body gets oxalate from three main places: directly from food, from breaking down vitamin C, and from breaking down other things inside the body. Norton emphasizes that about half of the oxalate in our bodies comes straight from the food we eat. The author clarifies a common misunderstanding. The liver doesn't remove oxalate, it actually increases the amount in the blood. The kidneys are the main organs responsible for getting rid of it, with some help from the colon, skin, and saliva. Norton points out that modern lifestyles and diets create stress on our bodies, which then leads to the body making more oxalate. This stress comes from not getting enough nutrients, being exposed to toxins, and experiencing ongoing inflammation. She connects this to common health problems like metabolic syndrome and diabetes. Norton specifically calls out certain oils, soy, canola, corn, and sunflower, as problematic because they become damaged when used in cooking. She also highlights that too much sugar and overall calories contribute to this stress. While olive oil is generally okay in moderation, she cautions that even it needs to be pure. She explains that a vegetarian diet, while often seen as healthy, can actually lead to nutrient deficiencies and muscle loss, and often involves a lot of high-carb foods that cause blood sugar spikes. Norton stresses that our genes and personal history play a role in how we handle oxalate, but diet and lifestyle are the biggest factors. She explains that many toxins from our environment, like pesticides and heavy metals, add to the problem. Too much oxalate from any source can create a vicious cycle. It lowers nutrients, increases inflammation, and makes the liver work harder, which then leads to even more oxalate production. The author details how seemingly healthy choices, like eating organic foods, aren't enough if those foods are still high in oxalate. She shares the story of a woman who ate a very clean diet but still had toxins in her breast milk, suggesting that her high oxalate intake was hindering her body's ability to process other toxins. Norton lists substances that turn into oxalate in the body, including vitamin C and certain amino acids. She warns against high-dose vitamin C supplements, as they can significantly increase oxalate levels. Norton explains that while we need some vitamin C, taking too much can be harmful. She also notes that collagen supplements, while popular, can contribute to oxalate production. She clarifies that carbohydrates themselves don't directly cause oxalate production, but a high-carb diet contributes to the overall stress on the body that does increase it. She suggests a moderately low-carb diet with animal-sourced foods is best. Norton then discusses how much oxalate the body actually absorbs from food. While most oxalate stays in the gut, a portion enters the bloodstream, and that amount is increasing as research evolves. She explains that people with gut problems, like those who have had bariatric surgery or take NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, absorb much more oxalate. Norton emphasizes that gut health is crucial, as damaged gut cells allow more oxalate to pass into the bloodstream. Eating oxalate with gut irritants, without calcium, or with lots of water also increases absorption. She uses the analogy of Lucy Ricardo on a chocolate factory assembly line to illustrate how easily the body can become overwhelmed by a constant influx of oxalate. Norton also addresses the role of Oxalobacter formigenes, a gut bacteria that can break down oxalate, but points out that many people are missing this bacteria due to antibiotics or a high oxalate diet. She concludes that relying on gut bacteria to protect us from oxalate overload is a myth, and that reducing oxalate intake is the most important step. Chapter 9: How Oxalate Accumulates. Sally Norton explains that many people believe their bodies easily get rid of oxalate, a natural substance found in plants, through their kidneys. However, she argues this isn't true and that oxalate can build up, causing health problems. It's a surprising idea because many healthy foods are high in oxalate, and people are often told to eat more plants for better health. But Norton points out that even with healthy kidneys, oxalate can deposit in the body, a condition called oxalosis. This buildup happens slowly over time and can cause several issues. Norton explains that oxalate can weaken bones and tissues, continue to cause problems even after you stop eating high oxalate foods, and even trigger the immune system, leading to ongoing inflammation. She emphasizes that simply not noticing these deposits doesn't mean they aren't there, and researchers have underestimated the impact of oxalates on health because of this. Choosing to avoid high oxalate foods can reveal a hidden problem of accumulated toxins. Norton describes how people sometimes experience surprising symptoms when they reduce oxalate in their diet. These symptoms aren't life-threatening, but can be strange, like gritty discharge from the eyes or nose, skin rashes, or sandy stools. She shares stories of clients experiencing these reactions as their bodies begin to expel stored oxalate crystals. These reactions vary from person to person, and some people may only have mild symptoms. The author explains that oxalate accumulation isn't just about eating too many high oxalate foods. It's also about how those foods are eaten. Norton discusses a study showing that occasional trigger doses of oxalate, combined with a regular maintenance level of oxalate intake, are more likely to cause deposits than a consistent moderate intake alone. Think of it like this. Regularly eating spinach is one thing, but occasionally having a huge spinach salad can be enough to start a buildup. A small study showed that eating just 3/4 cups of spinach could equal 17 days of normal oxalate intake in one meal. Even a small piece of chocolate can cause a surge in oxalate levels. Norton stresses that these oxalate deposits are difficult to detect with standard medical tests. They're often too small or scattered to show up on scans, and even biopsies can miss them. The body seems to store oxalate in various tissues, including blood vessels, eyes, glands, and bones, potentially as a way to protect vital organs. The author explains that oxalate crystals can irritate tissues and activate the immune system, leading to chronic inflammation. This inflammation can contribute to a wide range of health problems, from arthritis to heart disease. The immune system tries to contain these crystals, sometimes forming granulomas, which are clumps of immune cells around the deposits. While this can reduce inflammation, it doesn't eliminate the oxalate and can even create a place for infections to hide. Norton concludes that oxalate accumulation is a complex issue influenced by individual health, tissue condition, and dietary patterns. She suggests that understanding how oxalate affects the body is crucial for long-term health, especially for those already dealing with chronic health issues. She emphasizes that simply eating a healthy diet isn't enough. It's important to consider the potential impact of oxalate and whether reducing intake might be beneficial. Chapter 10: Symptoms and Syndromes. Sally Norton explains that many people try to eat healthy, but sometimes the foods they choose can actually make them feel worse. She believes a big problem is a natural chemical called oxalate, found in many plant foods often considered healthy, like spinach, almonds, and sweet potatoes. These oxalates aren't easily broken down by the body and can build up, causing a lot of trouble. Norton describes how oxalates interfere with how cells work. They mess with important minerals like calcium, which cells need to function properly. They also slow down energy production inside cells and can cause damage from something called oxidative stress, which is like rust forming inside your body. This cellular damage can lead to a variety of health problems. The author explains that these problems create two main engines of illness. The first is when the body's repair systems break down, because cells don't have the energy or materials to fix themselves. This can lead to things like weak bones, scar tissue buildup, and a sluggish metabolism. The second engine is when the immune system gets constantly activated trying to deal with the oxalate crystals, causing ongoing inflammation and damage. Norton points out that even if you don't feel sick right away, oxalates can still be causing hidden damage. The body tries to cope, but eventually it can get overwhelmed. She uses the example of a man who seemed healthy for years while eating a high oxalate diet, but suddenly became ill. This shows that problems can build up slowly over time. The author details how oxalate buildup can affect many different parts of the body. It can cause digestive issues like IBS, problems with energy levels and hormones, and even neurological issues like headaches and memory problems. She shares a story of a woman who suffered from severe bowel problems for 13 years, which disappeared after switching to a low oxalate diet. Norton explains that oxalates can also trigger pain and inflammation in the joints, muscles, and blood vessels. They can even interfere with the immune system, making people more susceptible to infections. She highlights how oxalates activate mast cells, which release chemicals that can cause a wide range of symptoms, from skin rashes to anxiety. The author emphasizes that oxalate isn't necessarily the cause of all illnesses, but it can definitely worsen existing problems or contribute to new ones. She explains that the body tries to protect itself from oxalate crystals, but this constant effort can lead to chronic inflammation and even autoimmune-like reactions, where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own tissues. Norton describes how the body produces a protein called osteopontin to protect against oxalate, but too much of this protein can actually worsen the problem by promoting crystal retention and inflammation. She also discusses how oxalates can contribute to fibrosis or excessive scar tissue buildup, and how they can disrupt the delicate balance of the gut microbiome. Ultimately, Norton argues that many chronic health problems could be improved by reducing oxalate intake. She believes that by removing this constant source of stress on the body, people can allow their natural healing processes to kick in and regain their health. She stresses that while symptoms may not always be obvious, the underlying damage from oxalates can be significant and should be addressed. Chapter 11: Clearing Oxalates from Your Body. Sally Norton explains that many people think getting rid of something bad in your body, like a toxin, should make you feel better right away. But she's discovered that's not always true, especially when it comes to oxalates, which are found in many healthy foods. It turns out, these toxins can stick around in your body for years, even decades. Norton points out that simply stopping eating foods with oxalates isn't a quick fix. It's more like starting a long cleaning project. When your body starts to break down and remove oxalate crystals that have built up, it can actually temporarily make you feel worse. This is because the process stirs things up, causing inflammation and using up a lot of energy. It's like dusting an old attic. You release a lot of dust while you're cleaning. The author shares the story of Gwen, a woman who felt better initially after cutting out oxalates, but then developed new symptoms like insomnia and heart palpitations. Norton explains this is oxalate-clearing illness, where the body is working hard to get rid of stored oxalates, but the process itself causes unpleasant side effects. It's like a dump truck overloaded with toxic waste. It's messy and can cause problems along the way. The immune system gets involved, causing inflammation that can affect nerves and even cause you to lose important electrolytes. Norton emphasizes that this clearing process isn't always easy. Symptoms can come and go for months, even years. They can be mild, like a headache or fatigue, or more serious, like heart problems. It's a bit like being on a bumpy roller coaster, with ups and downs and unexpected twists. However, even during these difficult times, there's usually some improvement happening in other areas of health, even if it's hard to notice. Norton illustrates this with another example: a woman who felt good on a vegan diet full of high oxalate foods, but then experienced eye floaters and fatigue. When she switched to a healthier diet, she initially felt better, but then experienced new symptoms like gritty eyes and headaches. This, Norton explains, was her body clearing out the stored oxalates. The author stresses that many factors influence how quickly and easily your body clears oxalates, including kidney health, hormones, and even your genetics. Importantly, Norton warns against trying to speed up the process, as that can actually make things worse. The key is to let your body work at its own pace. A major problem, Norton notes, is that people often misinterpret these clearing symptoms. She herself made this mistake when she first tried a low-oxalate diet, thinking she was getting sicker instead of realizing her body was healing. She highlights a medical case where a woman with kidney problems was given a low-oxalate diet, but her oxalate levels actually increased because the diet triggered a release of stored oxalates. This shows that simply changing your diet isn't enough. You need to understand the process of clearing and how to support your body through it. Norton lists a wide range of symptoms that can occur during clearing, from rashes and joint pain to fatigue and digestive problems. These symptoms can be unpredictable and may appear in different parts of the body. She explains that they are a sign that the body is working to eliminate toxins, even if they feel unpleasant. Ultimately, Norton encourages readers to remember that clearing symptoms are usually temporary, and that the body is in charge of the process. While it can be a challenging experience, it's a sign that healing is taking place. Understanding what's happening and supporting your body with a low oxalate diet can lead to significant improvements in overall health. Chapter 12, Assessing Your Oxalate Health. Sally Norton begins by explaining that figuring out if oxalates are causing health problems can be tricky. Unlike some illnesses with clear signs, oxalate issues show up differently for everyone. Symptoms often take a long time to appear, and even then, they can change or be hard to connect to a specific cause. Norton emphasizes that many illnesses could have other causes, like infections or even just stress, but that too many oxalates can definitely make things worse, even if they weren't the original problem. Norton stresses that a low oxalate diet isn't a quick fix, but it often leads to fewer and less intense symptoms over time. She shares the story of Helen, a 72-year-old woman struggling with weight, hunger, and pain, despite following other healthy diets. Helen was told to eat lots of vegetables, but many of them actually made her stomach hurt. Norton suggested Helen focus on which vegetables she ate, recommending a list of low oxalate options and encouraging her to eat more healthy fats like butter. The results for Helen were remarkable. Within a month, her digestion improved, she lost cravings, began losing weight, and could walk and climb stairs again. Her back pain lessened, and she felt more hopeful. Importantly, Helen realized that her lifelong struggle with compulsive eating was tied to the foods she was eating. She had tried many treatments over decades, but simply changing her vegetable choices made a huge difference. Norton points out that Helen's story isn't unusual and highlights how observing results can drive scientific discovery. Norton encourages readers to try a low oxalate diet as a way to learn about their own bodies. She suggests starting with a 3-month trial, focusing on eliminating the highest oxalate foods first, like almonds, sweet potatoes, and spinach. It's not about perfection, but about making a noticeable change. Norton explains that even reducing oxalate intake to normal levels can be beneficial. To really see if oxalates are a problem, Norton suggests an oxalate challenge. After a few months on a low oxalate diet, intentionally reintroduce a high oxalate food for a few days and carefully monitor for returning symptoms. She shares examples of clients who accidentally did this, one with chocolate cake, another with protein powder, and a third with figs, and experienced a quick return of their problems. This can be a clear sign that oxalates are contributing to their illness. Norton acknowledges that a low oxalate diet might seem difficult at first, but she believes it's actually quite simple. It's about learning to choose foods wisely and being consistent. She assures readers that they don't need to be perfect, and that even small changes can lead to significant improvements. The key is to be deliberate, consistent, and patient, and to listen to how your body responds. Chapter 13, A Phase Transition. Sally Norton explains that getting healthy isn't always as simple as just eating healthy foods. Sometimes, the very foods people think are good for them can actually be causing problems, specifically because of something called oxalates. Oxalates are natural compounds found in many plants, and while a little isn't harmful, too much can build up in the body and cause pain and illness. Norton stresses that the goal isn't to eliminate oxalates completely, but to reduce them gradually. It's not like a food allergy where you have to avoid something entirely. It's more about finding a balance. Norton warns against making drastic changes to your diet all at once. A sudden switch from a high oxalate diet to a very low oxalate one can actually make things worse. She uses the playful image of Lucy and Ethel, representing your body's systems for getting rid of waste being overworked. When you suddenly flood your body with less oxalate, it tries to get rid of stored oxalate quickly, which can cause inflammation and unpleasant symptoms. It's like trying to empty a full warehouse all at once instead of slowly moving things out. Norton advocates for a two-phase approach. First, reduce oxalate intake to a moderate level, and then slowly move towards a lower oxalate diet to allow the body to clear out the accumulated oxalates. Norton emphasizes the importance of being deliberate and consistent. She shares the story of Ron, a musician in his 70s who was struggling with thumb pain. His wife had already started making their meals lower in oxalates, which helped reduce his intake. Ron decided to give up his daily dark chocolate and peanut butter snack, and his pain disappeared. This shows how even small changes can make a big difference. Norton points out that Ron's success was due to the gradual approach. His wife had already started lowering his oxalate intake, making it easier for him to take the final step. However, Norton also shares a cautionary tale about Kitty, Ron's wife. Kitty dove into a very low oxalate diet quickly and initially felt better, but later developed a kidney stone. This illustrates that going too low, too fast can put stress on the kidneys. Norton explains that sometimes, people who are very eager to get healthy can be too impatient and risk doing more harm than good. She encourages readers to take their time and be mindful of their body's response. Norton explains that the body responds differently depending on how much oxalate it's getting. If you're eating a lot of high oxalate foods, you're constantly building up oxalate deposits. If you're eating a moderate amount, you're maintaining those deposits. But if you're consistently eating very low amounts, your body can start to break down and remove those deposits. She describes these levels as zones, ranging from danger, very high intake, to remove, very low intake. The goal is to move from the danger zones to the remove zone, but it needs to be done carefully. Norton stresses that consistency is key. It's important to avoid cheating with high oxalate foods, as this can disrupt the clearing process. However, she also suggests that occasionally including a small amount of a high oxalate food might actually help to regulate the clearing process. She notes that sometimes, after being on a low oxalate diet for a while, people become more sensitive to oxalate, meaning they react more strongly to even small amounts. Norton encourages readers to pay attention to their bodies and adjust their diet accordingly. She reminds everyone that this is a long-term process and that patience and persistence are essential for regaining health. Chapter 14, Converting Your Diet. Sally Norton begins by acknowledging that many people are exploring plant-based diets for health reasons, but she wants readers to consider a surprising idea. Some of the foods we think are healthy could actually be making us sick. She points out that even well-intentioned diets can cause problems if they include hidden troublemakers. She uses the example of swapping spinach and beets for watercress and radishes, showing that there are always alternatives. Norton explains that the key to a healthier diet isn't just about adding good foods, but also about understanding what might be harming you. She focuses on oxalates, natural compounds found in many plant foods, and how they can build up in the body and cause health issues. She stresses that starting where you are is best, and the goal is a sustainable, informed way of eating. It's about learning to see food differently and recognizing potential, landmines, foods high in oxalates. The author advises readers to start with whole, fresh foods and use her lists of safe bets and worst offenders as a guide. She doesn't want people to jump into complicated data right away, but to build a diet around foods that have been tested for oxalate levels. She suggests limiting or removing the worst offenders and using a swap chart to find healthier alternatives. If a food isn't on the lists, she directs readers to her website for more information, but acknowledges that testing isn't available for everything. Norton emphasizes that even if you're already eating healthy, you need to be aware of hidden oxalate sources. She illustrates this with an example from a fast food chain, showing how a seemingly harmless breakfast sandwich could be loaded with oxalates due to the spinach content. She encourages people to read labels carefully, paying attention to the first few ingredients and to be cautious when eating out. She also suggests choosing foods with short ingredient lists and preparing more meals at home. Norton explains that it's okay to start slowly and make gradual changes. She provides example menus, whole foods, pescatarian, and paleo, and shows how to adjust them to reduce oxalate intake. She highlights the importance of portion control, especially with foods that have moderate oxalate levels. She also points out that animal products are naturally low in oxalates and can be a helpful part of a balanced diet. The author offers practical tips for success. She encourages readers to learn new cooking methods, customize their food choices, and keep a food journal to track symptoms and progress. She stresses the importance of enjoying food and finding new flavors, rather than focusing on restrictions. She also advises being mindful of oxalate precursors, like vitamin C, and limiting processed foods. Norton cautions against relying too heavily on certain foods, like wheat and nuts, and explains how preparation methods can affect oxalate levels. Boiling can help reduce oxalate content, while soaking doesn't. She encourages readers to prioritize nourishment and to remember that a low oxalate diet isn't about deprivation, but about making informed choices. She concludes by urging readers to be patient, consistent, and aware of their bodies as they embark on this journey to better health. Chapter 15, Supporting Your Recovery. Sally Norton explains that even when people try to get healthy by eating good foods and taking supplements, sometimes those very things can actually make them feel worse. This happens because our bodies aren't always great at absorbing nutrients, and certain things can get in the way. One big problem is oxalate, a natural substance found in many healthy foods, but it can build up and cause issues. Norton emphasizes that oxalate overload is reversible by reducing intake, but often people also need extra help from supplements. The author points out that simply taking a bunch of vitamins and minerals isn't always the answer. Our bodies are complex, and things like gut health, inflammation, and even our genes can affect how well we use those nutrients. Norton stresses that as you get healthier, your body's needs will change, so what worked yesterday might not work today. She encourages people to listen to their bodies and adjust their supplement plan accordingly, keeping a journal to track what they eat, what they take, and how they feel. Norton highlights that lifestyle changes are key to supporting recovery. Dealing with oxalate overload can be stressful, both physically and emotionally, so getting enough rest and finding ways to relax are important. Small changes, like taking deep breaths or listening to music, can make a difference. She also advises easing into exercise and being kind to yourself, understanding that setbacks are okay. Avoiding toxins is also crucial, as our modern world is full of them in things like water, food, and even personal care products. The author explains that even seemingly healthy practices can have downsides. For example, while calcium is important, taking too much at once can cause problems. She advises starting with a small dose and gradually increasing it. Norton also cautions against relying too heavily on antioxidants, as they can sometimes interfere with the body's natural healing processes. She specifically warns against using painkillers like ibuprofen, as they can actually worsen gut inflammation and increase oxalate absorption. Norton dives into the importance of minerals, particularly calcium, magnesium, and potassium, and suggests getting them through supplements or mineral-rich water. She notes that many people are deficient in these minerals, and replenishing them can help with oxalate clearing. She also discusses the benefits of sulfur and trace minerals. She emphasizes the importance of clean water, suggesting filtered water with added minerals. Mineral baths are also recommended as a way to absorb nutrients through the skin. The author explains that citrate, found in lemons and available as a supplement, can help prevent oxalate crystals from forming. She suggests adding lemon juice to water or taking a citrate supplement. However, she acknowledges that some people may not tolerate citrate well and offers alternatives like bicarbonate. Norton also discusses the importance of B vitamins, particularly thiamine, B6, and biotin, for energy metabolism and oxalate handling. She cautions against taking too much vitamin C, as it can potentially increase oxalate levels. Norton concludes by outlining key recovery supports: lifestyle changes, mineral supplements, citrates, and B vitamins. She stresses the importance of avoiding things that can hinder recovery, such as probiotics, prolonged antioxidant use, and painkillers. Ultimately, Norton encourages readers to be mindful of their bodies, experiment with different approaches, and find what works best for them, recognizing that the path to recovery is unique for everyone. Chapter 16, Unbroken. Sally Norton understands that starting a low-oxalate diet can feel strange, even upsetting. It's common to feel confused when what you thought was healthy, like spinach, nuts, and chocolate, might actually be causing problems. She points out that deeply held beliefs about food and the pressure to fit in socially can make changing your diet really hard. It's like learning a secret about food that no one else knows, and that can feel lonely. Norton explains that many health problems aren't just physical. They can also affect your emotions and even your sense of purpose. Recovering from oxalate overload can bring up tough feelings, and it's important to be patient with yourself. She believes that healing isn't just about changing what you eat, but also why you eat. Many people find more clarity and peace of mind as they heal, which can help them deal with difficult emotions. The author stresses that modern nutrition advice isn't always right. For example, we're often told to eat lots of plant foods, but Norton argues that our bodies evolved eating meat for millions of years. She believes it's important to remember our ancestral past when making food choices. It's easy to get caught up in food trends and marketing, but it's crucial to think for yourself and question what you've been told. Norton acknowledges that sticking to a low-oxalate diet can be difficult because food is often tied to social events and celebrations. It's natural to want to look normal and participate in these traditions, but she encourages readers to prioritize their health. She suggests learning to recognize and interrupt the urge to eat foods that make you sick, and choosing healthier options instead. It's okay to be different and to put your own well-being first. She warns against seeking approval from others, especially doctors who may not be familiar with oxalate overload. Norton understands that friends and family might be skeptical, especially if they've seen you try many diets before. She advises focusing on getting well and letting your improved health speak for itself. A healed body is the best proof. Norton emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and inner peace. She suggests finding a sense of purpose and setting realistic goals. While support groups can be helpful, she cautions against blindly following others. Ultimately, you are responsible for your own health and must decide what's right for you. The author encourages readers to begin the low-oxalate diet thoroughly and patiently. She believes that consistent effort will lead to positive results. She also acknowledges that emotional eating can be a major obstacle. For example, someone might eat potatoes not because they're hungry, but because they provide comfort. Norton suggests addressing the underlying emotional needs that drive unhealthy eating habits. Norton points out that appetite swings are common during oxalate overload recovery. She advises listening to your body and increasing salt and mineral intake if you experience strong hunger. She reminds readers that their bodies are working to heal and will reward them for taking care of themselves. She encourages readers to prioritize mental and emotional relaxation and to find activities that bring them joy and contentment. Ultimately, Norton believes that healing from oxalate overload can lead to a stronger, more confident, and more fulfilling life. And that brings us to the end of our summary of this book. I hope you found it insightful and valuable. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe for more. Your support helps us bring you more great content. Thanks for watching.